Hello, and welcome to the podcast for Hope TBI, where you, as our audience, are embraced as hopesters. You can find us at www.hopetbi.com. This is part 2 of a 2-part series, and this episode is called The Silent Tsunami and Hurricane. We left off in our last episode discussing inappropriate behavior as a result of brain injury and how a brain-injured individual can still have a legitimate complaint even if their complaint includes them acting out inappropriately, and how it was important and is important to not dismiss a complaint that an individual has based solely on how that complaint was delivered. Their complaint deserves to be heard, deserves to be addressed, and should not be ignored. We talked about how they should not get their way just because they made a fuss, but again, the complaint should not be ignored. The inappropriate behavior should be addressed separately from the complaint, and an understanding had by the person dealing with that brain-injured individual to understand that oftentimes people with brain injuries have impaired judgments, have inappropriate emotions, which can contribute to anger problems. And just being cognitively aware of that and knowing how to talk to a person in that state. Now, we also discussed how cognitive rehabilitation for judgment and anger management can help as well. And that may come in the form of DBT counseling, that may come in the form of biofeedback or mindfulness counseling, and there's a variety of other methodologies out there that can assist a patient with improving their cognitive rehabilitation and managing their emotions, or learning to manage their emotions. Now, there are usually several causes acting in combination that cause a person to be angry. That's something that really needs to be paid attention to. It's not usually just one thing that happens. It can be caused by one thing, but usually it's a combination or a domino effect from several things building up. Now, some people, they may just be angry about the injury itself, how they got it, or problems that may have come with it, such as their new limitations or the physical disabilities they have, the cognitive disabilities. Perhaps they lost a job. Perhaps they've lost friends or relatives, money, even control over their own life or their own abilities. If someone else is handling the decisions for them, handling their money, that can be a real devastating effect on someone, especially if the person was incredibly independent before or used to doing all of their own personal care and managing their own life themselves. What this leads to, all these things, is a sense of loss. Now, loss can cause feelings of grief in people with and without brain injuries. So people with brain injuries don't have the corner on the market of feeling loss. The reason they don't is because it's just a part of human nature to grieve when we lose something, not just when someone dies, but also when we suffer an injury, an illness, or some form of trauma that we've been forced to endure, oftentimes through no fault of our own. However, poor memory or judgment or emotional or personality problems can absolutely complicate those normal grief reactions. So it's normal to feel the grief and loss when you're going through a transition or when you are experiencing a new normal. However, when you add that poor memory or judgment or emotional personality changes from the brain injury caused by the changes at the synaptic level in the brain or direct damage to the brain itself, that can make things more complicated. Now, some people were angry people before their injuries, and not much has changed. They still have the problem. In fact, oftentimes it may be worse. There may be folks that weren't angry at all. They were pretty low-key, pretty calm, easygoing before their injury, and now they act out. Now they may be cussing, they may be throwing things, they may say things that are inappropriate consistently. A lot of brain-injured patients experience impulsive anger, where they have no warning about it happening. It just happens. They could be having a really good day, a productive day. They could be having a fun moment. They could be laughing. They could be any number of emotions that doesn't include anger. And then all of a sudden, boom, impulsive anger strikes. Now, this is directly due to the brain injury. When the anger begins with the brain injury or is made much worse by it. When angry episodes occur due to minor events or situations that have happened that wouldn't make the average individual angry. When the angry feelings come on and they're sudden. When they come and go suddenly, like we were talking about. When the person having the angry episodes is surprised, embarrassed. They might even feel really distressed by those emotions they're feeling. They may not understand. They may feel confused. They may not know why they're feeling angry. Sometimes the anger can be easily solved or managed when it's something physiological. So, for example, if they're experiencing physiological stress, such as low blood sugar, then they can use medications or their diet to control that blood sugar, which can reduce some of that anger. If they're experiencing physiological stress, such as pain and fatigue, and usually that pain and fatigue is seen in the majority of injured individuals get worse the later in the day it becomes, or the more tired they become, that incredible fatigue. The emotional and physical discomfort that causes anger outbursts can be related to a lot of other things as well. If they're experiencing overstimulation, depression, hunger, perceived insults, for example, if they have unrealistic goals and expectations, if they're feeling depressed, or they just have a need for basic needs to be met, and those needs are not being met. They also may endure or perhaps even be enduring embarrassment, like if they're having bowel problems, incontinence. That can be really embarrassing. Sometimes family members think that they can control it and wonder why they're having so many accidents. Sometimes the patient may not understand why they themselves are having so many accidents, and they may have a lot of problems that way. One type of problem that can occur from a brain injury is something called neurogenic bladder. Neurogenic bladder occurs essentially when the nerves that carry messages back and forth between the bladder and the spinal cord and the brain don't work in conjunction with each other. There's a gap in communication, and they're not communicating and working the way they should. Now, damage or changes in the nervous system can affect lots of parts of the body. It can also, regarding neurogenic bladder, come along with many other medical conditions, not just brain injury. So neurogenic bladder can be caused by other conditions as well. However, if a person did not have neurogenic bladder as part of a previous disease process or medical condition before the brain injury, chances are the brain injury may have been the cause of the neurogenic bladder and would definitely require some specialized testing, diagnoses by a urogynecologist or a urologist. Urogynecologist for a female, a urologist for a male. And it's worth ruling that out. That way, if a person does have that, they can be given access to additional tools that can help them learn to manage the neurogenic bladder. Having things like that happen to the body can make a person just feel a genuine overall sadness. Now, feeling sad is a normal response to feeling those losses and changes. All those losses and changes a person faces after their injury can create a whole bucket load of feelings. Sadness, frustration, and loss are quite common after a brain injury. And these feelings often appear during the later stages of recovery. Now, can a person be sad and feeling down and gloomy in the beginning? Sure, they can. However, usually in the very beginning, you see more of the inappropriate behavior, the anger, the confusion, and the sadness tends to set in once the person becomes aware of the long-term situation they're facing. If these feelings become overwhelming or they start to interfere with their recovery, the person may also be suffering from depression. Now, these things should not be ignored and just swept under the rug as unimportant. You should not have the idea of, oh, well, I'll just get over it. Or if you're the caregiver, oh, they'll just get over it. They just need to buckle up. Pull yourself up by the bootstraps. Quit feeling sorry for yourself. Those are all statements that are not helpful at all to someone that is going through changes from a trauma or trying to deal with sadness they're experiencing from life changes, disabilities, and limitations. It is absolutely normal to feel sad over the loss you're experiencing. That does not make you weak. It does not make you unimportant. It does not make you invalidated as someone that's worth being listened to or cared for or taken seriously. Symptoms of depression can be tricky and can be hard to spot. Sometimes it can be even hard to spot when the person is experiencing those feelings of depression. It may include feeling sad or worthless. It may include changes in sleep or appetite, difficulty concentrating, withdrawing from others, showing a loss of interest or pleasure in the things they used to enjoy, or a loss of interest or pleasure in life in general. They may feel very lethargic, feeling really tired and sluggish. or having thoughts of death or suicide. Now, that can be kind of tricky to diagnose for a lot of providers because symptoms of depression really cross over with some of the same symptomology and regular symptoms of brain injury itself. So a person may have symptoms of brain injury where they're not sad, where they're not depressed, but it appears like they are because of the brain injury process itself. So that's why it takes a really good care team and skilled providers to help the person be able to traverse and get through these experiences and to be able to sort out what's what. Now, sometimes a person can be feeling anxious. I know that I went through a huge stage where I was depressed a lot. And sometimes it still hits me. But there were some times where I really didn't feel depressed. I felt content or okay. I felt like my pain was somewhat managed. I felt like things were progressing at a kind of even plateau. Not really getting worse, not really getting better, just kind of hanging in there. And something would happen to cause me to feel anxious or feel some sort of anxiety. And sometimes I would just have this sense of anxiousness or this feeling of anxiety that just felt like something horrible was going to happen all of the time, and I couldn't escape it. I didn't know why that feeling was there. I just knew that something bad was going to happen. And just this sense of constant worry about so many things, sometimes all at once. And sometimes I could relax a little bit and push my way through it, but never really ignore it because it always was just kind of there as a steady, quiet hum at a really low level. Now, feeling anxious or feeling anxiety, that's a feeling that is absolutely different than depression. Just because a person has anxiety or is anxious does not necessarily mean that they have depression or are depressed. And that's hard to explain to people sometimes. Anxiety is when you have a fear or nervousness that essentially is out of proportion and not a reliable comparison to the actual situation. So, for example, if we're on the highway and my husband's driving, and he's a really good driver, so I feel really safe with him. But if he's driving and someone swerves in front of us, or the traffic suddenly stops, and he has to slam on his brakes, that feeling, that sense of fear, can instantly take over my whole body and leave me feeling anxious. And the sense of anxiety can cause me to have sweaty palms. My heart rate increases. I get tightness in my chest. Sometimes I get a throbbing headache almost instantly. Now, anxiety and anxiousness comes in different ways to different people. Some people may start crying. Some people may start screaming. Some people may start itching their skin or working their fingers and hands. There's so many different ways. There's no way I'd be able to cover all the different examples of anxiousness or feelings of anxiety in this episode. It's different for each individual. Sometimes we can have similar types of things that happen to us after an injury that are relatable, and sometimes we don't. Now, anxiousness may be caused by a person having a concern about making too many mistakes or failing at a task, or if they feel they are being criticized. Some situations, such as being in crowds, or again, going back to the highway, if the traffic is getting thicker or faster, or there's bad weather involved where it's pouring rain and you have poor visibility. If the person is being rushed, or even feeling like they are being rushed, or adjusting to sudden changes in their plans. Oh, I can't tell you the number of times where I had a plan, the day was going good, it was okay, I was achieving my goals for the day, I was able to check off those boxes on that list I had, and all of a sudden something happened at the last minute to cause a change in those plans and threw off my mojo and threw off that forward motion, and that anxiousness that I wasn't going to get everything done like I needed to in the time that I needed to. It just presented itself as a giant albatross and became really overwhelming. And sometimes that still happens for me. However, I've done a lot of work to learn how to manage that and how to kind of try to anticipate when those things may happen and leave myself enough wiggle room in that time. So when those things happen, because, hey, life happens, right? So when those things happen, that I'm a little bit more prepared and have an opportunity to essentially just reset myself and prioritize what it is I can let go of and what it is I really need to hold on to. Which brings me to, hey, what can be done about it, right? What can be done about it if someone is feeling angry, if they're feeling anxious, if they're feeling depressed, if they're feeling anxiety? What can be done? Well, fortunately, the situation with the anger, now that tends to improve in the first few months after injury. And people often return to a more equal or level emotional balance and expression, but not always. People that do not recover from their brain injury within the first few months and have the post-concussion syndrome or post-concussive symptoms that linger and carry on longer than a few months, they often are the ones that will have ongoing challenges with their behavior and emotions, which can and often do include anger and anxiety and depression and all those other emotions, which can be challenging to manage. Now, if you're having problems controlling your emotions, I can't stress the importance of having someone to talk to. It's important to talk to a physician or a psychologist, a counselor, clergy, a rabbi, friends, a family member, someone. So you can have a team that's working with you to help you find out the cause of those emotions and help you get treatment for that. You may even need counseling for the family or couples counseling. That counseling can be reassuring, and it can really allow the individual to cope better on a daily basis. Now, I'm not talking about just any counselor, though. It's really helpful if it's a counselor that is specifically trained with working with people with trauma, traumatic injuries, with brain injury, with medical and physical changes and limitations based on injuries, illnesses, or catastrophic events. So it's really important to look at the type of counselor you're getting and what you're committing to for the plan of treatment for either yourself or the individual you're helping that is recovering from a brain injury. Several medications and alternative therapies and pain management, those are all things you should consider as possibilities, even if it's short term, that may be able to help manage some of those things. Now, they may help improve or stabilize the mood. Again, Those are all things you should consult a physician, perhaps even a neurologist or a neuroendocrinologist, a neuropsychologist, or essentially any other medical professional that's familiar with the emotional problems caused by a brain injury. Someone that has specific training in that field associated with the changes that happen not only cognitively, but physically and mentally, emotionally, throughout all the systems of the body when something like that happens. Now, as the one experiencing the effects of a brain injury or a trauma, there are many things that you can do to manage your emotions. And putting it in the first person here, there are many things that I can do to manage my emotions. The first thing that I think is really important is to be able to understand your own behavior. And that can be tough. That can be really difficult. So do the research. And you may even need help or assistance getting someone to help you do that research. Don't be stubborn and caught up in your ego asking for help. Again, it doesn't make you weak or less of a person to be able to ask for that. Something to keep in mind when I'm talking about understanding your behavior. For example, if you notice that you forget to eat and you don't even realize when you're hungry, and yet when you are hungry you get more frustrated, try setting an alarm to remind yourself to eat. Now, sometimes a person after a brain injury doesn't have a sense of hunger, and they may not even have a sense of fullness. So being able to set those times and set those alarms can be really useful in helping you have some consistency, committing to a working schedule, and keeping track of what your intake and output is as well, if you're needing to do that for whatever else you have going medically. Now, for another example is if you notice that you are more tired by the end of the day, then don't schedule appointments for the evening if you can help it. Because if you know that your memory is worse by the end of the day and you're exhausted and your pain is higher at the end of the day, then those evening appointments are going to be rough. And those are going to be hard to go to. And they're going to be hard to participate in. And sometimes you might be more tired by the middle of the day. Or maybe you're more tired at the beginning of the day. So that's what I mean by understanding your behavior, doing the research, being aware of what works for you. When in the day do you have the best ability? When in the day do you have the best cognitive input? And that's when you should be focusing. That's the time of day that works best for a patient to be able to focus their therapies and energy and time in. But allow yourself to be flexible, because again, a brain injury is not consistent with what you're experiencing. Whereas you might feel excellent one day at 2 o'clock, the next day you might feel absolutely awful and can't even get out of bed. So be gentle on yourself. Understand your behavior and do the research. Now next, take a moment for yourself. I called this brain time at my home. When I got home from neuro rehab and I was in the hospital bed at home for about the first roughly 3 years I was home. And it was tough because it was challenging for me to be able to hear the kids talking to me, 2 kids at a time. It was tough for me to be able to have lots of noises around me, and I couldn't watch a full TV program, not even if it was a half-hour program. I couldn't watch a full movie. I couldn't read books anymore the way I used to. Everything was so different. However, the thing that challenged me the most, I think, was the noise and the lights. The lights bothered me for quite some time, and sometimes I still am challenged by that occasionally. But one thing that has not really become something that has completely gone away is my sensitivity to noise or things that may be startling, like loud sounds or fireworks is another example. I absolutely loved fireworks before my injury and before the wreck I was in. We celebrated every single holiday, every single birthday. There's absolutely not a holiday we didn't make a big deal about in our household. There were some holidays we gave a little bit more attention to than others, but 4th of July was always a fun time. I can tell you that was not fun for me after the accident. The sound of those fireworks, the sound of poppers hitting the ground, it may as well have been like it happened right inside my head. It was torturous. And it was challenging. The dog barking was overwhelming. The kids doing the little bickering they did back and forth, just being kids, but it was so much noise. So it was overwhelming. And so it got to a point where, I couldn't go out. I couldn't do the social events that we used to do. I couldn't go do things with the family. And I had to get to the point where I said, you know what, you guys go. The kids still need to experience those experiences. I don't need to be there as a part of that experience. And honestly, on some things, I just couldn't be a part of it. It just couldn't happen. So we had to work out a way that we communicated with the kids and that my husband and I could communicate as well when I was completely overwhelmed without having a full-fledged meltdown, which happened a lot in the beginning. And sometimes it still happens, but happens, I can tell you, a whole lot less, because we've learned to have a communication with each other, or words we can say that let each other know that, hey, something is going on here. I don't know why I'm feeling overwhelmed, or maybe I do know why I'm overwhelmed, but I need a break. My brain is done right now, and I can't take anymore. So we came up with brain time. And brain time, I would literally say to the kids, okay, brain time. I would go into my room. I would lay down and cover up with a weighted blanket, or maybe several blankets, to feel that sense of heaviness on me that really just made me feel comforted and safe. If I was already in my room, I would close the door or ask someone to close it for me, and absolutely no one was allowed to bother me or ask me questions. It just gave me a moment to reset, to have some silence. And if we were in a vehicle, that makes it a little more tricky. And I would say, hey guys, I need brain time. And everyone understood that if I said that, I was really having a lot of anxiety to the point of feeling like I was going to melt down, or I don't want to say lose it, but kind of like that feeling like I was going to lose it. And I was just really upset about something. And they would immediately stop talking and give me space and silence. Now, sometimes all I needed was a moment, just a moment, to do a safety checklist in my head and be like, okay, Karen, look around you. Look for something you can see, reach out, touch something, smell something, listen to something, see something. Are you safe? Yes. Are you in danger at this very moment? No. Okay. And then going from there and talking myself through, and doing some breathing exercises and some other coping strategies that I utilize even still to help me through some of those moments. Now, again, sometimes that would only last a few moments, and I'd be like, okay, guys, thank you. Thank you so much. I truly appreciate it. I needed that. And if I'm at home in my room and that happens, I would come out of my room and say, thank you so much. And my husband would say, are you okay now? And sometimes it would be like, yeah, I'm good. Other times it'd be like, no, I'm not. But we can still keep doing what we need to do because I'm managing it. So having something that works for you is important, some kind of communication strategy. And brain time, that worked for me. That may not work for you, but come up with something that when you feel the signs of anger appearing or coming on, you have some way to leave the situation. Maybe leave the room or the event if necessary, so you can gather yourself. I guarantee that if the brain time was ignored or not respected, it always ended in an unfortunate meltdown, an overreaction, a misunderstanding, or sometimes an outburst on all sides where I'm feeling defensive, I'm feeling like I have to apologize and prove why I feel this way, and it just becomes this big brouhaha that could have been avoided in the first place. Sometimes, though, you may spout off and not even have the opportunity to take that moment. Or maybe you just acted out when you shouldn't have. To this I say, never do harm to others. Keep your hands to yourself, for goodness sake. Don't be putting your hands on people. That can get you into all kinds of trouble, including legal trouble. And you don't need that on top of the other things you're dealing with in your recovery process. That's just not something that would benefit you or your future for that matter. If you do end up running off at the mouth, hopefully you haven't done too much damage. Remember, words are powerful. And it's also important to remember to own your actions. Just apologize. Come on, how difficult is it? I know that it may feel difficult, but it's important that you always apologize, especially if you directed your outburst at that individual. If you have the opportunity, you may want to educate them about how your brain injury makes you struggle with anger, and let them know you are working on getting better. Maybe share your issues that you're having with the individuals you trust, whether that's your friends or with your family, a member of the clergy, a counselor, a support group, someone. Remember we talked earlier about understanding your behavior, doing the research, and talking to someone? Yeah, this is what you can do about it. Also, addressing diet and sleep hygiene and activity. I can tell you that I got really tired of hearing sleep hygiene. How's your sleep hygiene? Do you have enough activity? Are you exercising every day? Now, this kind of tended to fall on deaf ears because I had absolutely no appetite. I was nauseous. I was dizzy. I had headaches. I was throwing up constantly. So trying to eat in general was a challenge. Trying to keep food down was a challenge. Sleep hygiene. What is that? I mean, okay, so I don't sleep enough, or I sleep too much, or I can't sleep because I'm hurting too bad. And how am I supposed to do all this? And exercise, okay, if I've got a broken back and broken ribs and a head injury, and every time I roll over or move in any way, I am suffering through this enormous pain. How am I supposed to get up and do jumping jacks and do all these things and push-ups and take a swim and maybe, I don't know, any kind of exercise. So when you first start hearing all those things, your mind kind of feels overwhelmed with a lot of different thoughts. And sometimes that can bring up those feelings of anger and irritability at the person telling them to you. I'm going to tell you, though, as a friend and as someone that has gone through it personally, someone that has heard those statements, heard about the sleep hygiene logs and activity and exercise, I would love you to consider this a different way. Consider talking with your provider about managing any nausea that you have. Don't let the nausea get away from you. There are things out there you can utilize to help you get that under control. That is a game changer for sure. And paying attention to your diet and the types of food you eat really, truly is very impactful on your health and your behavior. You may want to consider an anti-inflammatory diet. That is something that worked really well for me throughout my recovery. A healthy brain injury diet. And yep, they are out there. Maybe consider selecting organic foods that are minimally processed, don't have a lot of pesticides or hormones or other things in them that are going to cause you to have more issues in your body. Having a schedule where you eat regularly, even if it's small amounts of food or liquid, and with items that are nourishing to your needs, can be extraordinarily beneficial to the healing process. Maybe request from your provider to refer you to a dietitian. This is not something that you have to figure out on your own. There are tons of specialists out there that are more than ready to step up and help you figure this out. But you do need to have some kind of consistency and some kind of plan as part of your healing process. Proper nutrients, and I can tell you, proper nourishment is going to help give you the energy you need to deal with that fatigue that seems to be there constantly. And when we talk about sleep, after a brain injury, a lot of times a person has hypersomnia or insomnia, and that's quite common after a head injury. Having a healthy sleep routine is imperative to proper healing and maintaining your health. A brain injury can also cause endocrine changes in the body, which can also affect your sleep, as can, for example, various medications you may be on that may be making you sleepy, or medications you're on that make you feeling like you're wired for sound and bouncing off the walls. Consider also that you might even want to talk to your provider because you might need a sleep study to determine if you maybe have developed sleep apnea as a result of your head injury. Or perhaps you had sleep apnea that was previously undiagnosed, yet is now more symptomatic as a result of your injuries. A sleep psychologist is someone that I was sent to discuss my sleep hygiene at some point during my recovery process. And I did find that those appointments caused me a lot of irritation. However, they were also quite useful. So don't rule things out if things are suggested to you. Give them a shot. They may work for you and they may not, but you're not going to know unless you try. I'm not going to say to get exercise every day. Okay? I'm just not going to tell you that. Sometimes the word exercise, whenever you're hurting, whenever you have physical limitations, maybe you're paralyzed, maybe you're not, maybe you can get up and out of bed by yourself, maybe you can't. So what I'm going to say is this. I will say, I want to encourage you to get activity every day. Don't think of it like exercise, because you may have a preconceived attitude or idea of what exercise should look like before your accident or before your injury and illness. So just think activity. Now, when I'm talking about activity, I'll say activity can be anything. Physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, pool therapy. All of this counts towards activity. So try to get at least 15 to 20 minutes of activity every day, or based on whatever schedule you and your provider come up with that's best for you. The average recommended, though, is 15 to 20 minutes a day. Now, when we talk about activity, set specific small goals you can be successful at that force you to be involved in some form of activity daily. And then gradually increase that activity. And you'll go back and forth. It'll be like 2 steps forward, 5 steps back, 1 step forward, 2 steps back. Just be consistent with your attempts and your effort every day. Your effort may be less on some days, it may be more on other days, but that's okay. Just be consistent. Now, I will tell you that activity does play a humongous role in your emotional health. And if possible, just try committing to some form of activity. And no, eating does not count. Just commit to a consistent schedule of something. The next thing is make it known. Don't hide your emotions. Don't hide your struggles or your difficulties or feelings of being overwhelmed. Don't try to manage your emotions on your own. You don't have to. Establishing a support system that allows you to have folks who may recognize when you are spiraling and be able to actively help can be really helpful. Be receptive if this happens, though. If you have someone as part of your safety net or part of your support system, and they say, hey, you know what? I see you spiraling, or I'm really concerned about you. You're really down a little more intensely than the down I've seen you at recently. Don't get upset at them, no matter when they're trying to help you or point things out to you. It's really important that you be receptive to what they're seeing as well, because you may not be able to see what you're going through in the heat of the moment. Now, no matter how petty or silly it seems, you don't have to do this by yourself, and it's all worth mentioning. Remain calm if an emotional outburst happens, okay? I know it can take a lot out of you. It can make you feel emotionally charged. But remain calm. And if you're the family or the caregiver, please try to avoid reacting emotionally yourself. Let the person work themselves through it. Please try to be a support. I know it feels personal. I know that it may even make you feel like not wanting to help them at all. But please just try to avoid giving them the same outburst they're giving you. Now, have a safe place or brain time place established for yourself as the caregiver or for the person going through it so they can calm down and regain control of themselves. Acknowledge the feelings that they're having and don't belittle them or act put out. If you can not do that, it's really important, if at all possible. Make every effort to listen to them, give the person a chance to talk about their feelings, and if they're willing and able to do so, receive feedback or give feedback to them when they're asking questions. Now, when you're giving feedback, make sure it's gentle, be honest, be candid, yet include empathy and compassion in the way you're communicating, and be supportive as they make attempts to gain control of those intense, extreme emotions. You may need to gently redirect attention to a different topic or activity. Distraction can be a great way to divert emotions to a different direction. Having a sense of humor and being able to be lighthearted can also be a really important healing opportunity for anyone going through any kind of extreme emotion. Humor and laughter has a way of lightening the mood to some degree. And don't withdraw. Don't withdraw as the person going through the emotions. And as the caregiver, don't be afraid to withdraw if the person is acting out. Don't argue with the person during their outburst. Rather, leave them alone completely. And as you leave, let them know why you're leaving, what you're doing and why. You know what? I'm leaving right now, Karen, because you're acting upset. You're not acting in a way that's appropriate. So I'm just going to remove myself from the room and I'll be back whenever you can calm down. Or come find me whenever you calm down. Or call me whenever you've calmed down. Just communicate what you're doing and why you're doing it. This isn't the time to ask them a ton of questions and try to force them to just be happy or get over it, okay? Once they've calmed down, acknowledge their feelings are valid and that you want to understand why they acted that way. And be willing to listen, like truly listen to what they're saying. And hopefully that person will be willing to listen to you as well. Just create a strategy with them that works. Instead of yelling, perhaps have them use a punching bag or journal their frustrations or go through talk therapy. Perhaps they can spend some time coloring or listening to music or maybe even light some incense or candles to create a calm environment. You may even want to come up with a specific word or action like the brain time or perhaps touching their shoulder or gripping their hand very gently. That may be a reminder for them to be aware of their emotions and to calm down a little bit and take stock of what's going on inside of them. The emotions a person goes through after a trauma are as varied as the injuries themselves. Not everyone that has a brain injury has mood and personality changes. You need to know that. However, mood changes and personality changes are quite common with those types of injuries, and they should not be written off as unimportant or treated as if the individual was acting in a deliberately or malicious way, trying to hurt people on purpose or just trying to be jerks on purpose. This is simply not the case. Having a tsunami of emotions, confusion, irritability, rage, anger, and deep sense of loss, and this lack of control is not only exhausting, but I can tell you from personal experience, it can be truly frightening. You may not feel like you'll ever be yourself again. You may not feel like your loved one will ever be themselves again. And guess what? They won't. They are different now, and that's okay. Having a head injury, though, is not a pass to be abusive to others and to be threatening or vile in nature. And while it does explain some of those extreme behaviors a person may experience or exude, it is also very imperative to care for yourself and keep safety of yourself and that person in mind when dealing with someone that has embarked on a verbal, mental, and emotional hurricane or tirade. Now, deep, brooding, dark, and destructive emotions, they lie very dormant in the depths of the injured mind. The goal is to manage those episodes and shine a comforting light into the shadows before you begin to drown or have the need to take cover. The Silent Tsunami and Hurricane that we experience, not just as survivors, but as providers, can be incredibly challenging, but possible to manage with the right support system. Thank you for listening to our episode today. You can find us at www.hopetbi.com. Until next time, when we share more opportunities to offer hope.